Evening, folks. So out of respect for everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is a great turnout here in Cupertino. My name is David Lovato. I am with VTA's Community Outreach and Public Engagement. I'm specifically assigned to this project, so I'm looking forward to answering any questions, working with the community and the public and business associations as we move forward with this project. So just some quick housekeeping. Restrooms are located right outside these doors down the hall and to your right. Also, if there's an emergency, we have multiple ways of exiting. We can go out straight through these doors and those double doors and you're right outside, or you can go down the lobby, but I would suggest if we need to exit fast, we just go through these double doors. Wanted to take a moment and acknowledge elected officials in the room. Mayor Savita, if you can stand up and be acknowledged. Thank you.
Thank you. And the other hat I wear is the VTA hat, where I represent 5 cities on the board: Campbell, Los Gatos, Montserrano, Saratoga, and of course Cupertino.
Thank you. And also Councilmember Rod Sinks.
Thank you very much. So I thought I'd do a little informal survey before the staff does their very professional job. How many of you are frustrated by traffic on Highway 85 and the surface? Well, you're in the right place. And how many of you live in Cupertino Union School District or the Fremont Union High School District? I was guessing most of you. How many moved here or think people are moving here primarily for schools? How many of you recognize that many of our teachers are coming from the Almaden Valley and places south to work here every day, and it's about a 2-hour commute each way every day, and they can't get on the corporate bus? You recognize that too? So many of us have been working on this, realizing that just widening the roadway doesn't get us that much. We could, according to VTA, we can get an extra 1,650 cars per hour in a lane of cars, and we can do at least 3 times that much with a well-designed transit guideway, which is why Savita and I and many of the others of you in this room are fighting and working to do something. How many of you know about the 1992 transit plan that the county had? Yeah, and in that plan, there was a transit guideway all the way up 85 and down Stevens Creek Boulevard. So, gosh, that's 25 years ago, and we think it's time to consider, after all of this development in our community, we think it's time to consider giving you all a choice. And if not you, then the teachers and other folks that come to work in the city and go up to commute to Caltrain every day. So that's what we as elected officials are about, and why we care about this. And we hope you learn enough to care about this project as well and make your voices heard. Thank you very much.
We'd also like to acknowledge Councilmember Barry Chang. Thank you very much for joining us. Councilmember Stephen Schunk, thank you so much. And without further ado, I want to just get into the presentation. I want to introduce some of the staff that's going to be here tonight to assist in the facilitation of the workshop. So many of you noticed we're not calling this a community meeting where we talk and you talk back and you're killed by PowerPoint. No, this is a workshop where you will be working with us in the back rooms. We have some stations that are set up that our project manager will go through during the presentation. I just want to acknowledge the VTA staff that's going to be working with us tonight. Again, my name is David. Maylee, who you checked in with, she's right outside. I want to acknowledge Jean. Jean, if you want to stand up. Jim's going to be working with you as well. So we are the VTA staff. Anyone with a red ribbon, please come up, and if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, we'll help you through the workshop portion. And with that, I want to introduce Adam Berger, Senior Transportation Planner and the Project Manager for this study. Adam?
Good. So they've got a fancy wireless mic on me. Is it working? Are we good? Okay. So back in 1994, on the day before the southern portion of Highway 85 opened, there was a 5K race that went from Stevens Creek down to De Anza and back. It was the first race I ever did. And as I crossed the finish line, people were cheering, music was playing, there were booths, there was all kinds of free snacks and stuff. And I think that was the last day when everybody on Highway 85 was happy. And I know that because my colleagues are telling me what it is like to commute on Highway 85, especially these last few weeks. Can you go next slide, Gene? And I know because in the online survey we're doing that we just received our 2,000th survey response today, we've been asking this among many other questions. What improvements would you like to see on Highway 85? And we're getting responses like these. So I know that it's not great out there. This may be a comment about all the other people out there that are ruining driving for each individual person. This could be about the sound that the neighbors along the 85 corridor are hearing from all the vehicles on the roadway. Next. And we're getting comments like these, people asking us to add more lanes to the corridor. Next. But then contrary opinions emerge. People don't want more lanes, they want light rail. Next. This person's thinking big, let's go underground. Let's stay above ground but put an amazingly high level of transit service. Next. And then we have folks who don't want to see any more buses on the freeway, that want express lanes to be expanded. Next. A monorail. Next. And I think this one, which speaks for most folks, which is just an emotional response, please do something to make my commute better. And I'm showing you all of these because I think these exhibit two things that I know to be very true in the 15 years that I've been talking to folks about how to make transportation better, which is that everybody has a very strong opinion about what should be done, and that those opinions are wildly divergent. So tonight we are going to be collecting a lot of your input about how you envision Highway 85 in the future, what we might be able to do to make it better. And you're going to hear a lot of your neighbors probably express things that you don't agree with. So I ask you to be patient and civil and do your best to get your comments heard by us. After all, you don't need to convince VTA staff about what needs to happen. You need to convince the folks on our policy advisory board and our board of directors, some of which are in the room tonight. So next. So this all started with the passage of Measure B in November of last year. It's a 30-year half-cent sales tax that's projected to generate over $6 billion in that time. And one of the program categories is specifically for Highway 85. There's an estimated $350 million that'll be generated, and the eligible uses are reducing noise from the road, funding a new transit and congestion relief project. They call for a transit lane, but that's not really defined in the measure. So we're also asked to do a study of transit alternatives to give some definition to what that transit lane might be. Next. Now, specifically, the ballot language says that we're supposed to look at bus rapid transit with ramps and access ramps and stations. We're supposed to look at light rail on the roadway, and then any other future transportation technologies that may be applicable. And so we are going to do that. Next. But there's a complicating factor here, which is that for many years, VTA has been pursuing express lanes. If you've used them or seen them at the 237-880 interchange, they give solo drivers an opportunity to use the HOV lane by paying a fee to get in there, and the fee varies depending on how much congestion there is. That helps us sell off excess capacity, it helps us manage demand, it helps us actually increase the number of people moving past a point, and we're looking at expanding that on the 101 and Highway 85 corridors. In most cases, or all cases, I guess, the HOV lane would be converted to an express lane, and particularly in this section of Highway 85, south of 280 to 87, we're looking at adding an additional lane that would be an express lane in the median. Now, that's the same space that this transit guideway, this transit lane would use. So we're setting ourselves up for a question about what's the direction that we want to move. We'll do our transit guideway study. We'll come out with a ranking or a listing of several different alternatives. Our policy advisory board will choose which of them they see as being the best implementation strategy. And then our board of directors will have to wrestle with the question of, do we want this transit improvement or do we want the express lanes? So all of these possibilities exist in the same universe to be decided by our board of directors. Next. So to take you through the transit component, the transit guideway process, we are starting by getting our hands into all kinds of data. Data from cell phones, we're finding out where you're traveling, where people's origins and destinations are, how fast you're going along the roadway, where the pinch points are, where the stress points are. We're looking at survey data, data from Caltrans, basically putting together the best profile we can of all users of the roadway to get a sense for how we could maybe design a transit service that would work the best for as many people as possible. We're also doing step 2 here. We're developing a project vision and thinking about when we get to the evaluation phase, what are all the different alternatives that we want to evaluate? And that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight asking for your help. Let us know what the vision is that you have for the corridor. Is it transit-oriented? Is it auto-oriented? Do you want to see faster travel speeds? Do you want to see more travel options, less vehicle miles traveled, less noise? We're here to absorb all of that, collect it, and then present it to our Policy Advisory Board at one of their upcoming meetings. Once the Policy Advisory Board hears that, they will make a determination about which alternatives we look at. Are we looking at light rail with 12 stations, light rail with 6 stations, bus with 12, bus with 6, 15-minute frequency, 30-minute frequency? We'll crunch all that data and generate a listing of how every project scores in a number of different metrics. And then we'll be back out in public. We'll say, here's what we found. Here's the projected cost, ridership, feasibility, all the important metrics, and ask you to again weigh in on which option you think would be best for the future of Highway 85. The Policy Advisory Board will take your input again and then make a recommendation to the board, and shortly thereafter, VTA's Board of Directors will make a decision about which direction to move in this corridor. Next. So tonight, these are some of the questions to think about. The long-term vision, what your values are, and are there alternatives that you did not see in that ballot language that we should be including in this analysis? We'd love to hear from you. Next. I'm going to pause for a moment to just ask if there are any clarifying questions about why we're here tonight, how to interact with us. Anything? David will bring you a microphone.
Oh, hi. Yes, I was wondering, I thought I heard someone say something about 1995, that it had been passed to do this, plus something on Stevens Creek. So is something on Stevens Creek also to be discussed during this time?
You can certainly discuss anything with us. We will absorb it. The reference to the 1990s that I believe Councilmember Sinks made was a reference to a vision for what the light rail system could eventually be. And 85 was a corridor that was considered a potential for light rail. And when they developed the southern section, they left the median portion open for future use, potentially transit. Any other questions? Yes, sir, Councilmember.
My concern is VTA is too political, making the decision based on political needs, not based on really traffic needs. So after you get in all this input, are you going to give us a more objective, more professional point of view, not catering to the political need?
So, as a public employee, my responsibility is to give you the best information that you can to make your decision and to collect that information from you. So I have no favorite in this contest. I'm intending to do a good job by the citizens. Yes, sir.
Do you have any information about how you expect any development along the corridor, like higher density development along the corridor to happen or not, to predict how transit will be used?
We have a short-term sense based on city land use changes that are planned or approved that have yet to be implemented that we can look at. We also have long-term land use projections provided to us by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission that we incorporate in our transportation demand model where we do our ridership forecasting. So to some extent we can, although realistically looking at a lot of the land uses that align with the corridor, I see single-family homes, suburban neighborhoods, probably not the place where you're going to see a lot of development occur. So we'll have to take a reasoned look at potential land use changes over that time when we do our analysis. Yes, sir.
I guess this is a process question. When the votes finally come to a final vote, the city of San Jose has about half the votes. Is that correct? More than half. So if all the other cities, North County, West Valley, get together and vote unanimously, San Jose could still override them. Is that correct?
There are 12 members of VTA's board of directors. 5 are from the city of San Jose. And then there are 2 county supervisors who have previously been council members in the city of San Jose. One is Cindy Chavez, who represents the east side. The other is Supervisor Yeager, who represents San Jose and some larger areas.
So, hi.
Yes.
So you are asking us to have a vision for the 85 corridor. And are you looking at 20-year vision or 50-year or 10-year? I'm wondering what would be the timeline that we should be thinking about when the project will be completed. And then, in order to have such vision, do you have any data on the existing job centers, job distribution, and housing distribution, the residential, the amount of housing that's available in different cities? Do we have any projection of maybe general plans from all these cities? What are their projected job growth and the residential growth in these cities? Because this affects how we would want to design 85 for the next 20 years.
Yes, we're considering city land use plans that we see in their general plan, as well as those done by recent council actions in the planning process. We're also using a lot of data that's gathered from people's cell phones, your location data, to figure out where you're going. That gives us a sense for how much demand to travel to certain areas exists. As for the timeline question, different options that VTA could consider would be implemented at different times, ranging from perhaps 5 years from now, if it were an express lanes option, to maybe 10 years or longer if it's a very extensive bus rapid transit or light rail type project, just depending on the amount of time it would take to raise enough money to build those.
So where do we find this data? You said you already have the data available. It seems it would be great if you present the data to us. That would help us provide vision, comments on vision, right?
We've purchased that data from the big data companies. We're analyzing it right now. We'll be presenting it to our policy advisory board over the next 2 meetings. Those are November 21st and December 11th. So in short order, once we've crunched it, we'll put it out there on our website so that you can see it.
Back in 2004, 2006, light rail in the Santa Clara Valley was the worst producing light rail in the history of this nation. Since that time, of course, we've completed some stuff on the east side, and we send a lot of riders out to the ballpark, and we have still manual riders taking numbers on it and a lot of free tickets. Is the Santa Clara Valley light rail still the worst producing light rail in the United States?
I don't know the specifics for certain, but I know that we face a lot of...
It was 4%. What's it now?
I do not... Which statistic are you speaking of?
Ridership. What's transit ridership that VTA has provided in the past 20 years? It was 4% turn of the century. Where is it now?
4% of all trips made on VTA. Yes. We're around 3%.
Thank you.
Hi. So you mentioned something about land use along the 85 corridor and how it is pretty suburban right now. And I was wondering how this fits in with MTC's Plan Bay area and also like with the priority development areas, because I noticed that there aren't a lot of them along the corridor. So are there plans to try to create more PDAs along that corridor to, I guess, justify the use of transit along that corridor?
Yeah, so the terms you're using, I'll share for the audience. The One Bay Area is a plan that the Metropolitan Transportation Commission is putting together that has among its goals increasing land use density, putting growth in places that are near transit. PDAs, or priority development areas, are places that cities can designate for receiving certain funds for, I think, planning and perhaps even construction. It's a program designed to increase densities and the intensification of land uses around transit stations. Cities have land use authority. So in each city, the planners there, the elected officials there are going to have the best insights on what can change there. From VTA's perspective, we advocate for accommodating growth around transit stations as the best way to do it while reducing the amount of vehicle miles traveled. Seeing no more, I'd like to, oh, one more? Sorry.
Could you clarify vehicle miles traveled?
Okay, the question is to clarify vehicle miles traveled. That is just adding up all of the miles traveled by all the vehicles in the county. So if our objective is to lower greenhouse gas emissions, to have less traffic, to get more people on transit, we'd pursue strategies like making transit better, making access to transit better to try to decrease those numbers.
Adam, we have one more.
One more, yes.
Oh, you're holding it, okay. I'm concerned about putting something down the center, which every time I get on 85, I think, oh, that would be a great idea. But if you put something, have you thought about where you're going to put it? Is there going to be parking for the neighborhood to get there and things like that?
At this point, we are at the 30,000-foot level of just trying to see, is there enough space to do it and is it the right decision? Once we get more committed to an idea, then we'll look into specifically how folks access it, if there's park and rides, are they walking, how all that works out. But that's certainly a valid thing to be considering as you consider the different opportunities. Yes, sir.
I came down here tonight, a little disappointed at seeing that we're just pretty much restricted to looking at the current right-of-way of 85 for what to do. And 85 was originally built as a bypass for 101, and maybe we really need to be adding capacity, transit, workable transit. 101 corridor, instead of putting it up here.
Well, you're going beyond the scope of my project and the budget I've been allocated, but I appreciate the vision. Can you go to the next one, Gene? So what we really want to do tonight is to hear from you. We're going to have a number of stations scattered around the perimeter of the room here tonight. Back here, we have map stations where we have maps of the corridor. We would like to take as much input as you are willing to give us. I'll be back there. My boss, Jim, will be back there. We'll be taking input. We also have opportunities to participate by doing our online survey. I understand that you've already depleted all of our paper copies, so we'll have to either go on iPads or on cell phones to continue doing that. Gene Gonzalo from our Highways Department is here doing a cameo presentation of our Highway 85 noise reduction project. And we also have an opportunity to vote in the back for your priorities. We have beans. Everybody gets 4 beans. There are 4 jars. We'd like to see your preference. And of course, tell staff anything you'd like us to know that we can take back to the Policy Advisory Board and Board of Directors.
You don't have one for noise reduction in that.
That's a separate project. But yeah, Gene will be here. He can answer your questions on that. And that's it. So thank you, everybody. Please head to a station and help us collect your input.